The country of Ireland, once known as the island of saints and scholars, and the people of that great land sent missionaries all over the world to help bolster the Catholic faith of people in struggling territories. Now, it's Ireland that's struggling to maintain her own rich history of Catholic education and faith. And tonight, we'll find out what we can do to help. So please stay with us. Thank you, welcome. I'm Father Mitch, and welcome to EWTN Live, which is our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And tonight we're doing that. Our guests tonight, who are here tonight, have teamed up to try and maintain a Catholic presence in higher education inside the country of Ireland, where secularism has taken great hold and all but driven out any Catholic option at the university and college level. And that has its own effects on priestly vocations and the broader spiritual life of the country. To talk about these and other issues, please welcome the host of EWTN Radio's Celtic Connections, Kathy Sinott, and the president of the Friends of Catholic Education in Ireland, Mr. Nick Healy. Kathy, welcome. Nick, good to see you again. Glad to hear. Nick and I have known each other for a long time. We did a lot of work over at Ave Maria University together. But Kathy, I only know you by your voice from your radio show that you do Celtic Connections, which you say is the only Catholic broadcast from Ireland.
Well, there's no Catholic broadcast radio or television in Ireland. Mm-hmm. In fact, the last Minister for Communication, Dermot Ahern, said it would never be allowed in Ireland, which is interesting because every other European country has Catholic radio.
No, but is there something that Mr. Sinott had against freedom of speech?
Mr. Ahern, one minister told me, when I said, we have to have Catholic radio, he said, but it would be trying to convince people to be Catholic. I couldn't even answer. I was, said yes, the truth.
And my impression is that today there are a lot of forces within Irish media who are trying to convince people not to be Catholic.
Well, of course, but there's no even playing field.
But so again, my question is, this gentleman does not believe in freedom of speech?
Well, no, I don't think so. But fortunately, EWTN has facilitated this wonderful program called Celtic Connections.
We also, we can get a copy of the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights. And you might just, if it's not religious, just talk about amongst yourselves about this, freedom of speech and things like that, and press, all that. We'd love to have you discuss that.
Yeah, no, it would be great. And we badly need it because for Irish people, one of the problems is that, often the faith that they're walking away from, they don't actually understand it. If they knew what it was, they wouldn't be walking away, but they have no way of finding out what it is. Right. School programs are not very strong. In fact, they're very, very weak religious ed programs. Mm-hmm. At primary level, at secondary level, they're often non-existent. In, third level is very secular. Even where there is a supposedly Catholic ethos, it can, some are better than others, but there's a lot of gaps. I think there's been so much, the priests in Ireland have been so criticized over the last 10 years that many of them are, afraid to maybe give a strong sermon or, speak very forthrightly. And no media. The EWTN is a great gift to us, who can get it by satellite or online, but no Irish media, no Catholic media. So it's hard, and you know, we've found that a lot of the loss of faith in Ireland, I think it's just because they don't know what the faith is. A lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it.
Which is, again, quite remarkable that your politicians would state that they don't want there to be that kind of freedom of speech available. You know, I sometimes fear that when you scratch secularists ever so slightly, that thin veneer of liberalism peels off to reveal a certain level of fascism.
Intolerance.
Well, that's the less organized form of it. Now, Nick, what are you doing in all this? You're not from Ireland.
Well, my ancestors are from Ireland.
All right.
I had, on my father's side, they came over from near Kilkenny, probably about 1830.
Okay. So well before the famine.
Before the famine. Mm-hmm. And as far as I can tell, all of my ancestors and all of my wife's ancestors were Irish, of Irish descent. Okay. They're New York and Brooklyn, which of course had huge Irish populations. So. And I didn't know a lot about what was happening in Ireland. I read from time to time about the scandals or about the fall off in church attendance and that sort of thing. But it wasn't until Kathy called me about 2 years ago and asked if I would provide some counsel and guidance on starting a new Catholic college or university in Ireland.
Now, of all the people in the world, why did she ask you?
Well, maybe I'll answer that.
All right.
We had.
All right, yes,
well, we had, for 2 years, we had been working towards this. I had had the experience of children coming to America and going to good, faithful Catholic colleges, what we call Newman Guide colleges.
And by Newman Guide, what do you mean by that?
Well, the Cardinal Newman Society does a wonderful service of identifying colleges that are in compliance with Ex Cordia Ecclesia, the Church's constitution on third level, on higher education.
Right.
And so they would have gone to colleges like Thomas Aquinas Christendom, Franciscan University, Ave Maria, Southern Catholic, near here. And what at one point, about 4.5 years ago, my son died in a tragic accident at Southern Catholic. But he died with his faith. And he had said to me before, a few years before, when he had come home from Georgia for Christmas from college, he had said, you know, Mom, if I hadn't left Ireland, if I had stayed in Ireland, I'd have no faith. And that really, really impressed me. And the fact that,
and he was glad that he did come here and find an adult faith.
Yes, and it was an accident, and yet he had just within a couple of days been to confession. He had done some adoration, you know, he had been to Mass. And I was so thankful. I was so sad, and I was so thankful. And I just thought, why do none of his friends have this? You know, and so at
his friends here in the States or in Ireland?
In Ireland. You know, that young people don't have that opportunity. They're just leaving the church in droves, not even knowing what they're leaving. You know, just as my son didn't really know, even though he was raised in a Catholic home, he didn't even know until he got to this faithfully Catholic college what he, you know, what Catholicism was, the treasures of it.
Just so that I understand, I know in this country, especially in the late 60s and in the 70s and even into the 80s, there was a certain watering down of catechesis in such a way that people were encouraged to be very pleasant and very nice, but knowing the commandments, the sacraments, the facts of the faith, the history of the church, that was discouraged here.
The wealth and beauty and treasure of it.
Does that relate to the Irish?
Well, it's even more. I would often have a discussion with someone, or you know, one of my own, you know, neighbors or whatever, and their idea of Catholicism is what they've heard on secular television. You know, they even those that go to Mass often have little concept. You know, my people languish for want of knowledge, you know, as it says. But so I started at his funeral. I actually started, you know, asking people, would they help me establish a college in Ireland? And I found that people all over the country were so supportive of this idea. They saw it as such a hope. But after about 2 years, we realized, how do we do this? And Monsignor Sweatland from Christ in the Campus.
Well, and he does a number of programs here.
That's right. Well, I rang him, and he said, everybody in America wants to know how we can help. We're all worried about Ireland. You know, it was pushing an open door talking to him. He came to Ireland, he spent a week, and his summary at the end is, you must as soon as possible get yourself a Catholic college. You have to start training people in depth. You have to start forming people. And when we said, how do we do this? He said, well, you got to talk to Nick Healy. He's done it so often before.
Now, all right, so now we're back to you, all right? What is it you've done so often before?
Well, I don't know if I'd say it was so often, but I, of course, was with Tom Monahan in the founding of Ave Maria University. And before that, I helped set up the branch campus of Franciscan University in Austria.
That's in Gaming.
In Gaming.
Yes.
And I worked with Cardinal Schönborn at his request, which he said came from the Pope, to set up the International Theological Institute, which was also in Gaming for a while. It's now in another town in Austria. And I worked with a group of others and helped start some additional Catholic colleges in America. We had a little foundation that provided guidance and recommendations and so forth. So I had an understanding of how it can be done.
Yeah, and you know, this is something very important, because even Franciscan University in Steubenville had kind of lost its Catholic identity until Father Michael Scanlon and a community of other folks came in to help restore that identity.
Yes.
And many other Catholic colleges have lost, some have put it to death, you know, that they don't want any association with Catholic teaching on their campuses. So this is part of a process here.
Yes, well, of course, I was 11 years at Franciscan University with Father Scanlon, and that was back in the late 80s and through the 90s. So I learned a great deal about what an authentic Catholic university was. And Father Scanlon achieved a near miracle at Franciscan, and not many schools could be rescued the way Franciscan was.
You see that process has gone on with Benedictine out in Kansas. There are a few of these that
Catholic University of America.
Catholic University of America.
Yeah, Marymount University. Yes, a few have. That's why the Cardinal Newman Society has been so valuable, because it has encouraged trustees and alumni of Catholic colleges and universities to ask the questions, why aren't you complying with Ex Corde Ecclesiae?
Which was written by St. John Paul II.
Yes.
As you said, as a constitution for Catholic higher education.
Yeah, it's really a kind of minimum standard for Catholic education. It's not an easy standard, but you should be doing much more than that.
I think they wrote it in a fairly general way to accommodate different circumstances in, for instance, communist countries and non-Christian countries.
But it is the bottom line. And certainly, all, you know, in our plans, and I say our because I very quickly, many people joined me, you know, in asking this. We all wanted to be sure we were far above Ex Corde Ecclesia, but certainly that was the bottom line. There was no point in having another college or another university in Ireland that wasn't reaching that standard.
Right. And you know, and again, this crisis continues as some college presidents and such will even say, we reject Ex Corde Ecclesiae, which means out of the heart of the church. They don't want to be out of the heart of the church, which is where the institution, the idea of a university came from the heart of the church, which is part of John Paul's point.
You know, part of this thing, though, is that we have the setting in which all this was happening was really a crisis in the faith in Ireland. We had had the abuse scandals. We'd had a real diminishing of practice, religious practice, and yet the root of the faith in Ireland is still very, very strong. You know, I lived for 5 years spent a lot of time in Belgium because I was in the European Parliament, and I found that, you know, we hadn't gone that far. You know, if someone is sick, they may not go to Mass, but if their child gets sick, they know to ask people to pray.
Yes.
You know, at every funeral, it seems everybody knows how to say a decade of the Rosary. The root is still there. The culture is still very, very Christian. And I just felt there was a window of opportunity that if we waited, it would be too late. The root would die. But if we could bring back the faith, if we could start letting young people know what it is. I mean, it takes very little before they fall in love with it.
Yes.
You know, it's so attractive. The faith is so beautiful and rich and attractive. But if you never get to actually meet it, if you only meet caricatures of it,
yes,
then, you know, so this is what we wanted to do. And that college piece is critical. There was an article written by Professor John McCarthy. He's an emeritus professor in Fordham of history, and he's done several books on Ireland and Irish America. And he had done last year he came to Ireland and he gave a kind of an assessment and history of the decline of faith in Ireland. And at the end, he makes 2 recommendations. One is prayer, and 2 is start a faithfully Catholic college. That's a critical piece for the comeback of, you know, of the type of situation we have in Ireland. It's the essential piece. So that's what we're trying to do.
And it's certainly, you know, when you mention Belgium as a contrast, that what's happened recently, I mean, in the past year, they've come up with a law that parents can kill their children
it's even
without
more
their permission.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bad enough that you talk about assisted suicide. This is legalized murder of children.
It's even more than that a child can choose to die without their parents' knowledge and consent, just with the advice of their doctor.
And the parents can kill the child without the consent of the child.
And this is how far you go. And, you know, in Ireland, we've had the tragedy of legalized abortion this year, even though at this stage, the law hasn't come into effect because no regulations have been published. But, you know, we still have a country that love their family. In fact, I'm convinced that had we had a referendum, we wouldn't have legalized abortion. It was trickery on the part of the state against the will of the people. Having said
we're
that,
familiar with that here.
Yes, yes. But having said that, we have to look to the future. What's happened in Ireland for years and in so many countries is we're always fighting rearguard actions. You know, they set the battle and we're stopping fires and we're spending all of our energy defending. But they're calling the shots. And we're saying with this college that we go out and proactively, you know, we take a proactive thing of beginning to form the next generation in the greatest gift you could have, the faith. And this is what's so important about this project, because Ireland only has 4 million people.
Right.
You know, 4.5 million people. It doesn't take a lot of graduates before you have the yeast, you know, the loaf rising.
Well, it was one British man who was so effective in evangelizing all of Ireland to begin with.
That's right,
You
St.
know,
Patrick.
so-
He was Irish at heart. We made him our own.
He was a Brit, but not English, because England didn't exist. But he was he was a Brit or Romano.
I know.
And say, oh, no, don't give me any of that stuff. I deal with real history here. Now, this is, but the great thing about his evangelization was not that he started a holiday for selling more beer.
No,
That's
no.
not what St. Patrick was about. And he's not there to promote leprechauns, but the opposite, as far as I understand.
Yeah.
But this inspired the learning of the Irish. The Irish became so brilliant and learned, and were the last light of learning in the West. until they became missionaries and spread their light.
That's right.
This is key for understanding Ireland's history and its identity.
Well, you've brought up something very important, and this is critical to how we're approaching this college. Irish have, really embraced the faith, and then in various periods of their history, gone out across the world sharing it, bringing it. St. Patrick had that famous vision after on Croagh Patrick, where he saw the millions and millions of people who would get to heaven because of the seed he had planted.
Yes.
And people of every race, of every age, every costume, everything. And this has been Ireland's heritage. It is Ireland's vocation. It's still Ireland's vocation. The Irish go out, but we're in a decline right now of what they have to bring. And this is where, so many people in the world owe their faith to Ireland.
Well, one of the things I'm aware of is that Ireland became an economic dynamo for a while. They called it the Celtic Tiger.
Celtic Tiger, yes.
Yes. How's the Tiger doing right now?
Not too well. Not too well. No, we're in a recession. We're in a very definite recession.
Yes.
But it's made people more real. I mean, it's very hard. A lot of people are suffering. But it's also made people more real. Interestingly enough, when the recession hit, our birth rate actually went up.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Everybody wasn't running around all the time, holidaying. But it's also offered opportunities, the recession, even in terms of the fact that we're, for the last 2 years, me a little bit longer, looking for a home for Newman College. And certainly, the fact that we're at recession property prices is a big boost to eventually finding somewhere.
It's something that we would like them to say, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to be the steps that you take for getting this college going? Because you're the man with all the know-how and everything.
Well, it started when my wife and I made a pilgrimage to Ireland about October of 2012. This was in response to Kathy's call, would I help? And we made the pilgrimage in gratitude to our Irish ancestors for passing the faith on to us. And I knew enough about Irish history to know that that faith was kept by the Irish under the most harsh conditions imaginable. During
Mr. Cromwell was pretty
even
awful.
Long after that, during the penal years, priests could be shot on sight. They were hunted like wolves. If you were Catholic, you weren't allowed to acquire property. You weren't allowed to hold a certain level of position in the government. You couldn't rise above a certain level of education. You were a permanent second-class citizen.
Right.
And all you had to do was become a Protestant, and the world would be open to you. Prosperity was yours. But most of the Irish refused, and they held on to that faith and suffered for it.
And again, I look at that as the heritage of truth that they were so committed to. They didn't become Protestant for the sake of prosperity, like it was promised, but they were taught to love the truth by the early Irish saints.
Yes.
So they maintained the truth of their faith rather than succumb to hopes of fleeting prosperity.
And it was this faith that gave rise to the Irish character, which is so beloved by people. The Irish culture. It's not something that arose from their ancient history or their origins as Celts or Gaelic tribes. This was brought on by the faith. Ireland became almost an archetype of the Catholic Christian society. People learned to rejoice even in suffering and hardship. They learned courage. They learned to express themselves beautifully in music, singing and dancing.
They also acquired a great sense of humor about themselves.
Yes,
in particular.
Storytelling, poetry. That great culture is the result of the faith. the faith was, or the culture was not derived from some state. It was derived from the Catholic culture that deeply grew in Ireland.
And it was the Irish monks who craved learning.
Yes.
They wanted to get as many books, not only Latin books and Celtic books, but Coptic, Hebrew, all these languages.
Greek.
They just wanted to learn everything they could.
And they passed that learning on very, very happily. So there's an enormous amount for Irish people of Irish descent to be grateful for. And not only, though, did we get the faith passed on to us, but think of the thousands of Irish priests, religious, missionaries, educators that went throughout the world, particularly the English-speaking world, to Canada, England, Australia, and America, and became open schools. I think at one time in the United States, every bishop was Irish. It was the infrastructure of the church that was built by the Irish in America. So we should be grateful for that. Just a few months ago, Justice Clarence Thomas expressed great gratitude for the education he received from Irish nuns.
Yes.
So it's not just Catholics.
No,
he wasn't Catholic at the time.
At the time, right. But they taught, they opened hospitals.
Yes.
They did, schools, whatever they could to help the poor. Something that you can't accredit to the atheists.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But, it's very important now, because now, in a sense, Ireland was the mothership. And the mothership's floundering. The mothership's in trouble now. Right. And I think this is one of the messages that...
I'm hopeful that by appealing to particularly Irish Americans, of which there are something like 40 million in the United States alone. I've seen statistics that there are 70 million Irish in the diaspora, as it's called. That the mothership is in trouble. Won't you help? It's payback time. When we can, let's help the country, the nation that gave us so much over centuries. And so we have an organization, Friends of Catholic Education in Ireland, that we are using to raise money from Irish Americans, and we'll go beyond Irish Americans, those who want to help restore the faith in Ireland. And not just a few missionaries or a few evangelists, but at the intellectual level, because this is so critical in the society today. You have to have people that are capable of responding to the attacks in the media and the government at the intellectual level.
We need to take a little break. We have to do that now, but I want to come back and pick up from that about how the importance of the intellectual is for the courage the church needs there and everywhere. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes to carry on this great conversation. Please stay with us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, we want to invite you to come and join us. If you have a chance to come down here to Birmingham, please do so. The Pilgrimage Department phone number is 205-271-2966, or go to the website EWTN.com. Also, There's a new website featuring information on how you can set up a pilgrimage to the Shrine of the Most Blessed Sacrament in Hansville, where Mother Angelica and the sisters live. You just have to go to www.olamshrine.com. olamshrine.com. And you can do that. And also want to mention that you all have a Cardinal Newman website. It's Newman College.
NewmanCollege.ie.
NewmanCollege.ie. Is it Newman College Ireland.ie?
No, just NewmanCollege.ie. The
Okay,
IE
Newman
is, of course,
College.
the Ireland.
All right, .ie, so that people can go there to find out more about what you're doing and information about how they can help out. And you, Kathy, of course, do your weekly radio show from Ireland in Cork, correct?
Well, that's right. The producer's in Belfast and I'm in Cork, and we use technology to make that happen.
It's all magic, and then you broadcast around the world.
We broadcast and we cover issues all over Europe.
Sure.
So the guest is usually on the phone.
Okay.
So technology is wonderful. But it's a great show. I mean, we do a lot of new stuff.
Sure.
For instance, the last year we've really covered the abortion legislation, that struggle, and in the UK, the legalizing of same-sex marriage, that whole controversy. But we also do a lot of kind of human interest things. We did a beautiful program on the Jesuit who took all the photographs of the Titanic.
Oh yes, that's right. He was the last photographs of the Titanic.
He was from Cove, yeah.
Right. He was on his way to America, and his superior said, "That's too fancy a ship for you. Get off."
He said, "Get off."
At Belfast, right?
Well, no, in Cork, in
Cork,
Cove,
okay.
in Cove, Queenstown.
There you go.
And he actually wanted to pretend he didn't get that telegram, but he then obeyed. And for the rest of his life, apparently, he gave the most beautiful sermon on obedience, because obeying that telegram saying, "Get off the ship," saved his life.
Exactly.
He then became a war hero as a chaplain in World War I. Wonderful photographs, and probably one of the greatest Irish photographers of the age.
Yeah, his photographs of the Titanic are stunning.
Wonderful. Well, we had a lovely show about him and about a priest, Father Biles, who died on the Titanic. I think we're probably the only one that's done a show about him. And we do a lot of these really interesting sort of features, news analysis, etc.
Well, folks can get the times to watch that at EWTN.com/radio. You can look up the times. Now, what we want to do, though, is get back to this college that y'all are starting. And one of the things I was thinking as we ended up the first part of the show is that you mentioned how a lot of the clergy don't speak up, and they've sort of been weakened to speak up for the faith. Do you think that has something to do with a lack of intellectual or kind of backing up against the smart aleck comments of the media?
Yeah, I do. In the United States, we went through a period in the 70s and 80s of a lot of dissent and confusion, particularly in Catholic higher education. But out of that, there came a number of Catholic intellectuals that are extremely strong in the faith and providing a tremendous resource for Catholic faithful. People like Michael Novak and Robbie George and George Weigel. And I do think that the Catholic laity have an enormous responsibility to stand up and defend the Church and defend the Church's teaching, especially in the critical areas of family and life. This is the battleground in our culture.
Well, and one of the things certainly the clergy have learned here is you cannot worry about whether they like you. Like parents, that, right?
Yeah.
Mom, if you do that, I won't like you anymore. Well, tough
okay.
luck. I'm not
Yeah.
your friend, I'm your mother, right? We're Mom here. But you know,
right.
you know that. And we have to be the same. We're here to speak the truth about Jesus Christ, the truth about God, about what it means to be human, the world, what's right and wrong, and whether they like us or not, just like you did with raising children.
Yes.
But you need somewhere to form that laity, to
Right.
nurture that laity, even to publish that laity.
Right.
You know, and this is really, has always been the job of the academic centers.
Now, here in this year, 2014, you are starting this. You know, why did you choose 2014 to get started?
Well, the crisis is pretty urgent.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
You can't wait.
every year that goes by, things are getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sooner a counter attack is made, the better. You know,
Yes.
we really need to start sowing the seeds for a renewal of the Catholic faith, the renewal of Catholic intellectual life, renewal of Catholic education. And I've also been convinced that if we start something, it's easier to raise money for it than if it's just an idea. Mm-hmm. If there's something concrete, if there's a reality to it, it's easier to point to that and say to people, will you help this?
Yes.
And so we've been looking for a while for a site in Ireland, and we had a few that looked good, but for one reason or another didn't work out. Either we were outbid on a auction or we couldn't quite make the financing for it. So we decided, well, we're going to start anyway, and we have a very good relationship with a Catholic college in New Hampshire called Thomas More College. It's one of the Newman guys.
As a matter of fact, we've had them here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've become very good friends with the president there, William Fahey, and he loved the idea of what we're doing. And he said, any way we can help. So one of the things they're helping with is they're going to recognize our credits. Any credits that are earned at Newman College Ireland will be accepted as credits earned by Thomas More College.
Okay.
And
Thomas More is itself accredited.
Sure.
Of course, yes. And they have a program in Rome. And I happen to know the director because when I was at Ave Maria University, we sent students to Rome to this program. And it was a very fine program. I met the director. He's a Maronite Catholic named Tony Asaf. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, if you need to start a program, you could start in Rome with us. So that seemed a little far-fetched at first, but on reflection I thought, you know, sending the first group of students to Rome has an important symbolic meaning too. Newman went to Rome. Mm-hmm. And, you know.
Cardinal Newman himself,
Cardinal,
I mean.
yes,
Yes.
Cardinal
John
Yes.
Newman.
Yeah, Cardinal Newman.
Who were naming the college after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we have at least a group of anywhere 10 to 15 students who will be in the Thomas More facilities with more mature Catholics, by the second year we'll now have some upperclassmen. They'll be sophomores with the maturity and
Sure.
and having accepted the culture of a Catholic college or university. This to me is highly important today. You can't underestimate the effects of the university or college culture on the way the students learn or don't learn.
And it's often very negative in Ireland at the moment.
Well, it's and here too. I mean, Steubenville itself was known as a party school
yes.
until Father Scanlon
Right.
made it a place of seeking holiness
Yes.
among the students.
Well, I always told Father Scanlon the greatest thing he achieved in his many years there was teaching young people that they could live the Catholic moral life joyfully.
Yes, that's right.
That was a tremendous achievement. It wasn't a matter of white knuckles and just harsh discipline.
No.
It was a matter of learning that God made us a certain way. The commandments are there for our joy, our good. They're not there as a restriction on our freedom.
Right.
And so when students learn that, and they learn that mostly by witnessing the faculty and staff, the lives they lead, the families that they're raising.
And now at a place like Steubenville, the other students give that witness to each other.
Which is,
and at these other schools as well, you know.
Yes.
yeah, and
at
it's the importance
Christendom.
of that college community, you know, that
Yeah.
you create. People talk a lot about online, and maybe someday we will venture into that, because not everybody can come to college. But you can't substitute for a good, faithful Catholic college community.
Right,
You know,
right.
to
And as I've traveled around myself to Christendom and Benedictine and Kansas and other places, I've seen that very much. You know, it's a vibrant, happy kind of place.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know.
We call that the accompaniment principle.
So you want to get that started
Yes.
by having them do some of their learning in Rome at the Thomas
Yeah,
More
begin their liberal
campus.
arts core curriculum
Yeah.
for the first year
They'll begin
in Rome.
this September.
And then as they start to build up a few students, be ready to move as soon as you find a place
God
in
willing,
Ireland.
we'll have a campus in Ireland by September of 2015.
God willing, indeed. Yeah.
And we'd like to see that campus too. We don't know the size or the facilities we'll have, but we really would like to see it as a resource to the whole church in Ireland. We would like Catholics in Ireland to see it as their own, to use it for retreats, for conferences, you know, really to, as I say, see it as its own. Ireland's a small country, you know.
You know, and it's, you know, again, something that all these other universities have been doing as well. You know, probably Steubenville is the most successful at having youth conferences all over the
Yes.
country, but also youth and adult conferences on campus and
Yeah.
such. It's just tremendous effects beyond just the campus life.
Yes.
And that's what you're looking for as well.
And I know myself, I never want, I mean, I like being the age I am. I always think I wouldn't want to redo it for anything.
No.
But the only time I ever feel like I'd like to be young again has been the very short times I've spent at Thomas Aquinas College, you know, Christendom, Ave Maria. You know, I just think, yeah, you know, I wouldn't mind being young again, and no other time. And it's so refreshing, so renewing. And so obviously we need to create the college community, really begin to do the work, the primary work of forming young adults. But really these become resources for the whole church.
Right.
You know,
exactly.
intellectual centers for everybody.
Exactly, exactly. And, you know, it's the kind of thing also where you'll certainly need people to even contribute good books.
Yes?
You know,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
it won't be just looking for money, but, you know, there'll be folks who have old libraries
Yes?
that they'll stop reading when they die,
Yes.
so they
Yes.
might pass on to y'all.
Well,
Amen.
very, very essential. And in fact, there's one beautiful Columban in Britain, and who has already said,
A
you know,
Columban?
a Columban missionary,
Oh,
a
but
retired
the
missionary.
order of priests.
Yes, and he's said that he would love to give us the books, would be interested. And he was so excited when we said, oh yes, we'll need a library. And he said, that's wonderful, because now I can hang on to them for, you know, I will hang on to them for you. And just that joy that somebody actually is going to value, you know, this, something that, you know, a lot of people don't think have any value anymore.
Exactly, exactly. Now, one of the questions that that frequently comes up is when you have a Catholic identity in a school, does that mean academic freedom is out the window?
Oh my gosh, no.
Why not?
Because the Catholic identity as prescribed in Ex Corde Ecclesiae simply requires that you have a Catholic mission, a mission to serve the Catholic Church, that a majority of your faculty be Catholic, and that the theologians take an oath of fidelity to the local bishop. But I mean, that's
Into the magisterium.
and to the magisterium. But that's no different than any office holder takes an oath to uphold the Constitution.
And
or
there's
go-
even a few of them that believe it and live it.
Yeah.
Now, here's one of the things that I certainly noticed. In today's college scene, there is a real collapse of academic freedom in the name of the politically correct.
Yes.
Well,
So that when one college in the spring of 2014 was going to bring in a camel to show that we're over the hump, they said, "Oh, that's culturally insensitive." Why? It was like, what am I doing? And so this is, the kind of thing where, ironically, when you look at the history of Catholic universities in Europe, there was far more academic freedom to discuss any topic. Now, if you brought up a topic and proposed this, you had to be able to defend it.
Yeah.
And that's academic responsibility.
Exactly.
Well, I just tell you a little story. We have so many academics who are very interested in this project, and they keep saying the same thing. They just love the idea that you would be able to be who you are, profess your faith. And one university, we had quite a few of the lecturers that were supporting this project, giving us advice. And I had sort of 3 here and 2 there and 1 there, etc. And I asked them all to come and meet at one point for a meeting. And they all came. The meeting was on the grounds of the university. And they all met each other. They were mostly young lecturers, but none of them had known the other were Catholics. Like these 2 knew they were, and that one and that one. And now they all got to know each other. But it's because in the university, everyone had to keep their head down. They had to, not be overtly anything. Now, that's not academic freedom.
That is the situation in so many institutions in this country.
Everybody's bunkered.
Exactly. You can't, if you express yourself, you're offending somebody. Well, can they defend themselves intellectually? And do they know anything, or are they afraid to learn? This is where politically correct relativism shuts down academic freedom in the name of trying to leave it open. They don't. Again, there's that thin veneer that you keep scratching to find the fascist underneath all of these relativists.
Well, because for a Catholic, a faithfully Catholic college, the search is for the truth.
Right.
I mean, and that's the bottom line. It's about the truth. And in fact, our motto for Newman College is Veritatis Splendor, the splendor of truth.
Well, you didn't come up with that yourself.
No, St. John Paul II.
Just checking.
No.
And you were going to say something there, Nick?
Well, I was just going to remark that one of the latest of these politically correct insanities is that students are now being, have asked that they be warned about books that they are assigned to read, whether they have any material in there that might be upsetting to them. Huckleberry Finn could be upsetting. So there seems to be this amazing idea of protecting people against feeling that their sensitivities are offended. I mean, where is the intellectual combativeness that belongs in a university?
But see, that's exactly the issue. They look upon truth as something that is in your emotions.
Yeah.
When you see, I've said this on other shows, when you hear them discuss religion on CNN and such, they talk about your feelings about this. These are not my feelings. If you want my feelings, come on, let's put up your dukes. Yeah. But this is not about feeling, it's what I think, what I choose, and they can't grasp that.
Well, but the amazing thing is, at the end of the day, one of my daughters graduated from Ave Maria last year, and she was happy. I mean, that was like the icing on the cake. She got the truth. She got to pursue the truth. She was challenged. And the result is the feeling. She she had a happy experience, good friends, clean fun, and a real sense of accomplishment. So those are the results. They shouldn't be what we base it on, but they're the results.
It's what they do with relationships as well. Oh, I feel I should marry this person. is the guy a fool or not? You know, if the woman is a fool, I don't care how you feel, don't marry a fool. You know, that's just good sense. And then the feelings go away, well, then the marriage goes away. This is not the way truth is. It's not reality. And, you know, it sounds like you're ready to teach them how to think, how to know the array of choices in front of them so that they can make acts of the will based on thinking. Right. Is this what you are up to?
Because it's not indoctrination, it's giving them the tools to pursue the truth and see the truth in every situation for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Is that what you're trying to do too?
Oh yeah, the idea is for a liberal arts education, a core curriculum of a minimum of 2 years, theology, philosophy, history, natural science, literature, mathematics, something that Cardinal Newman would have thought essential to an educated person.
Something that everybody thought was essential until recently.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Cardinal Newman wrote that sort of landmark book that every liberal arts college goes to, The Idea of a University, as a series of lectures in preparation to go to Ireland.
Right, to start a university.
To start a liberal arts university, and yet we need to have one now.
Yes.
And this is what we're very much, and the reason we've named it Newman College is we see a very direct connection with what Newman came to do, which he came at the invitation of the Irish bishops who decided 160 years ago that Catholics had been denied an education for a long time. You know, they had Queen's just opened, Queen's University in Belfast, Trinity in Dublin, only Protestants were allowed to attend. And they recognized 160 years ago that they needed higher education.
Right.
Newman came over.
And it hasn't been quite done.
Well, no.
And that's what y'all are about to do.
So we're picking up that. I mean, there's even an encyclical written by Blessed Pius IX on the Catholic University of Ireland. Yeah. And we need to pick that up because it's still waiting to happen.
It's about time the Irish start listening to what the Pope told them to do. We are running flat out of time. And I want to make sure that everybody knows you can go to the website www.newmancollege.ie. newmancollege.ie. Find out more what they're up to, ways you can help with in various forms. But I want to thank both of you for being here with us. This is a great project that you've got going, and it looks like it's got a lot more work, but somehow I bet you both are going to be able to keep that up. So we're glad to have you here. And I want to make sure I give you all a blessing. May Almighty God bless you and keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you. May He lead you in all of your ways by His peace. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And, you know, we also want to remind you that this network can bring you this program and all the other good programs because it's your network. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills. Thank you.